Driving has a rhythm all its own. Don't wreck it with a text. Before you get behind the wheel, silence your phone. Or better yet, designate a texter. For more text-free driving tips, visit stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
The following is a presentation of Unidentified Entertainment and 22nd Century Radio. Manassas, Fairfax, Washington, D.C.
Time and space appears to be out of time. I can never reach a human being on timeandspace.com. Who monitors this supposed phone number? Pardonne, H-Town moi. What? What?
Listeners new and old, thank you for joining us. The Time and Space radio show has returned. Yes, it has been more than 4 years since our last show, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. On a very serious note first, however, I would like to, on behalf of everybody on the show, of course, dedicate this episode to the victims of the Parkland, Florida tragedy. This event should bother everyone, really, for many reasons. And I'd like to be clear from the outset of this recording, broadly, but also for this episode, this is not a political show, and it's not in any way intended to be about politics. So even though I might mention this tragedy to begin with, it's not meant to be a political statement. Now, it's impossible not to discuss some topics without talking about government. And when I say we don't talk about politics, it sounds like a contradiction because we occasionally cover something called exopolitics, and the show originates from suburban metro Washington, D.C. But there's a point to doing the dedication. First of all, my ex-wife is an elementary school teacher. I have 2 kids in high school. My mother taught for more than 35 years. So something like this, it should hit everybody, but some people, I guess it hits a little harder. The Sandy Hook tragedy happened less than a year before my mom died, and according to my dad, she was very, very disturbed by that event. And it's just one of those things that stays with you. So I'm not trying to be controversial, I'm just trying to be honest, and, honest but not political. I just want to highlight one important fact that really has come out about why this Parkland disaster happened. Parkland, and frankly, every other one of these disgusting massacres, this was a catastrophic failure of government. In the case of Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, it was a failure at every level of government. The more that we're hearing about it now in the following weeks after it's happened, the worse the story seems to get. So there's lots of ways to find analysis on how and why government failed. It's not for this show to cover. I wish I wasn't even talking about it right now, but I wanted to be blunt. I'm certainly not the only one saying it, so please, respectfully, don't forget or misunderstand this fact. The government failed. Okay? Okay. So moving on. Our last show was 2013. My mother passed away from cancer around that same time. And in many ways, I'll just admit it kind of broke my will to actually try to do anything for a while. So certainly that's one reason why the show hasn't been around for anybody who was following it. And please allow me to be the first to admit that there was much about the old shows that was no good. It didn't come out the way that I wanted. The majority of the work was experimentation, so I'm not exactly disappointed by that. But for anybody who goes back and, hears any of the old stuff, you're going to realize that there's a huge difference between those old shows and these. There was a lot of on-the-job training, a lot of mistakes, too much engineering, trying to do too many things, working way too hard to sound like a big old FM radio station. I wasn't staying within expectations or limitations. To be honest, I don't think I really knew what the expectations or limitations were. But so what? You fall down, you get up. So this is definitely a complete overhaul of the show. I'm not going to spend a bunch more time explaining it. We'll just get right to the topic of the day. One quick note about the old show that I do want to follow up on, though. I'd like to give a quick shout out, if I could, to Mark Zuckerberg. Yes, that Mark Zuckerberg, the guy we all know as the emperor of Facebook. Mark deserves a lot of credit for the success of the show in the 2009 to 2013 run that we had. And Mark, I'm speaking directly to you. Thank you for taking my money. I spent a lot on that old radio show trying to advertise it, admittedly, like a fool. And I have no problem admitting mistakes. I was being a complete sucker. But I hope that Mark, it's okay if I call you Mark. Can I call you Mark? Mark, I'm hoping that you'll actually be able to help us this time to reconnect with our old fans. See, because according to the information that you provided, the radio show had thousands of fans. There were 6,000, according to the data I saw. We had like 6,000 fans in Lahore, Pakistan. There was something like another 2,700 fans in Buenos Aires. And amazingly, Mark was hitting me for a nickel every single time one of those fans clicked on an ad. I mean, it was amazing. We had like another 3,000, 4,000 fans in Johannesburg. See, my real concern was that we were going to need to schedule appearances, right? I was worried about the impending tsunami of autograph and interview demands, right? How do you schedule a meet and greet for 10,000 people in Manila? We're going to have to get our time and space merchandise back online for sale. I should send Zuck one of our souvenir t-shirts. Anyway, seriously, Zuck, saluting you, king of the online hustlers. Yeah. All right. So here we are. New show, new attitude, new budget. On this Grand Return episode, I would like to pick up where we left off. No, not the fishing derby. That's a fall event, people. It's in February. It's February now. Sorry, the fishing derby is a fall thing. We have a lot of old material to get back to. Eventually, I'll try to get back to some of it because I think there's going to be some response. People are going to hear the old shows and ask me about stuff that I've completely forgotten about. But I want to get right back to the UFOs. Where are the UFOs at? Chris Rock. I have to tell you, I was clicking in the folders with all the information and stuff from the old shows, and it hit me immediately that it had not only been years since I'd looked at any of those things. It was just an amazing feeling to sort of be back in the chair, if you will. So, all right. So back to the UFOs. Let's do that right out of the gate. An important disclaimer before I do this story. If you're triggered by the words Fox News, please get help. You seriously need to get a grip, okay? It's just a TV channel. This is just a radio show, okay? You're being asked to keep listening now. It is optional, so I'm warning you ahead of time. Bail if you must. All right, a few weeks ago, specifically January 11th, I was watching TV. I was doing laundry. I tend to have more than one screen going. I'm one of those guys. I'm sorry to admit that. On one screen, I was probably watching hockey or something on Netflix maybe, and the other was news. Now, much to my astonishment, on Fox News, Tucker Carlson had on as a guest a woman named Leslie Kean. Who is Leslie Kean, you might ask? Now, first, I want to admit, as a seasoned UFO researcher myself, this caught me completely by surprise. I was going bonkers during the live broadcast. Second, and here we go with the show notes. I'm going to keep them as limited as possible, but very specific. I'm going to try to add links as listener references, on YouTube or hopefully wherever you find it. Just making sure you know that I'm offering support material. Leslie Kean is a well-known and well-respected researcher and has done a lot of work in the field of ufology, if you want to box her into that. In this case, she was promoting a new book on UFOs. The book is called UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. Now, also current at the time of the interview, and really tied in because she was part of this through the New York Times, was information about this Pentagon UFO program. Again, I think the topic has been extensively covered in the past 60 days, so we might talk about it some more, but I don't need to go off about the Pentagon thing. It's not like we won't discuss it at a later time. That Pentagon program apparently had a $22 million budget. Just as a side note, I wonder what the federal budget for public grade school security is. Anyway, this interview, Kean's appearance on Tucker, sparked a lot of reaction. Between the Pentagon program being exposed through FOIA, there was video of F-18 pilots chasing a UFO. The actual pilot of one of those jets was being interviewed in adjacent segments. You can watch it yourself. I'm providing links to the original Fox News piece. But I would like to take a step back from the UFOs entirely to point something else out, and that would be Tucker Carlson. Laugh if you want, I'm trying to be a completely impartial journalist here, okay? What an astonishing and unbelievable interview this guy gave. His reaction, his commentary were amazing. Watch it yourself, I provided the links. I don't want to highlight my own meager journalism experience, but I do have enough of it to understand how striking this interview was. Within the first moments, my jaw was on the floor. Carlson introduced Kean and the book, standard fare for a TV news show. But it was the way he finished the introduction that left me speechless. Now, I'm sorry to sound overly dramatic. It was really unexpected. This is Carlson about 1 minute in as he's introducing Kean, noting that her work had gotten his attention. Quote, "I've stopped making fun of people like you and started paying attention." Really? Look, I get Carlson has a shtick for you skeptics and critics, and I'm not here to argue whether he was acting or embellishing. I'm quoting the man. "I've stopped making fun of people like you and started paying attention." This is not where I'm going to try to ad-lib a bunch of jokes either. I've personally interviewed dozens of researchers and authors just like Leslie Kean. I haven't met Leslie Kean, but I've met a lot of people that have done similar work. And honestly, on behalf of pretty much all of those people, thanks, Tucker. Thanks. That's one incredible statement. When I went back and watched the video, I wanted to take Kean's facial expression as he said it and put it on one of those big fat heads and put it up on a wall. It's a priceless expression. I've stopped making fun of people like you and started paying attention. So Kean answers a few moments later with a big grenade of her own. Tucker asks very directly, what do we know about UFO sightings? And if you listen closely to Kean's answer, allow me to highlight something she says. Quote, "Well, we do know that there are objects in the sky and sometimes in the water that demonstrate extraordinary capabilities." End quote. For you novice UFO fans who may not have caught that, sometimes in the water meaning what? I'm not a novice researcher, but she went there and I thought I should highlight it. And in fact, there's not enough time right now to even cover this point. We'll definitely have to get back to it. The object she's referring to is typically called a USO, an unidentified submerged or submersible object, sometimes in the water. Where's Marco Ramius when we need him? It got better. It got better, the interview did. As an experienced UFO researcher, by which I mean I've read and followed the subject. I don't personally own a tinfoil hat. As an experienced researcher, the moment that Tucker blurted out 2006 Chicago O'Hare, my head exploded. And there's no sound effect necessary. Watch the clip yourself. 2006 Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Huge mystery. Tucker tries to clarify details of the sighting. Kean actually corrects him. If you watch, her information is accurate. It's good information. I'm very familiar with the case. And I was stunned that Tucker was even talking about it. Quote, "There's a saucer hovering not that far over the plane. People in the tower see it. Other pilots see it. Dozens of people see it. It's real. And the FAA refuses to investigate. How could that be?" End quote. I have to tell you, that's how a journalist is supposed to do his job right there. I mean, you're laying the case out. Yeah, right. How could that be? And I'm sorry, who saw it? Pilots, ground crew, air traffic controllers? Not exactly a bunch of alcoholics in the president's lounge waiting to board. At 4 minutes into the interview, Kean adds another striking line. Quote, "I appreciate how baffled you are, Tucker. end quote. Maybe I understand some nuances about that not everybody would, but I have to say I've done years and years of serious research on this subject. It was a major exchange on a major network. And let me be very clear, Tucker is not baffled by Kean. He's not baffled by the topic, really. He's baffled that the FAA basically did nothing about the incident. Last, about the interview, using the Chicago incident as just one example, but Kean reiterates the lack of serious government investigation. As Kean reiterates this, Tucker blurts out the following line. It's sort of lost if you're not paying close attention. He blurts it out pretty fast. Yeah, what if this is the Chinese military? Yeah, very intriguing point, Fox News guy. I have to say, it's a striking interview. I've put the segment up, the link up, for you to check out the segment. And one other thing before we cut to a break here. Leslie Kean, I found later, had stuck a post on Facebook. You know, there were a bunch of comments, of course, following the Fox News interview, and she had posted a direct link to it. I wanted to share her Facebook post real quick because I thought it was interesting, and it leads us into our next segment. She wrote, "Thanks for all the comments. I think Tucker did a great job. He actually knew something about a specific case, which is more than most TV anchors do, and he expressed his outrage. Kudos." Thanks for listening, folks. You can find us on Twitter at Time and Space US. We will be back for another segment.
22nd Century Radio.